We're halfway through the Pacers preseason. What have we learned so far? Bennedict Mathurin has 39 points. The defense looks good and then bad. Tyrese Halliburton looks good in one game. The guards are passing a lot. There's a lot to take away from this. We'll talk about it all today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers as always. My name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and the Westside Community News, and today we're halfway through the Pacers preseason. It's time to talk about what we've learned because, my goodness, has it been a lot between the rotation being different and guards passing the ball more than I thought. And Bennedict Mathurin looks like, wow, and the defense looks great and then terrible. And I have lots of thoughts, and I have to talk a million miles per hour about them. So I need a level head and somebody to bounce this off of and more takes. So joining me to talk Pacers preseason, some of you probably heard his voice more than mine over at Setting the Pace, writing for the Blue and Golden, his own Substack going on now. If you haven't subscribed, you should do that. Alex Golden of the lovely land of Pacers World. Alex, you did not get fired by the Panthers today. How you doing, sir?
Doing better than Matt Rule, that's for sure. I have to give you a little shout out here, though, because your Phillies took my Cardinals out in the playoff.
That's right. I might actually go to Citizens Bank. I was not expecting to be able to, but I might have to go.
I don't blame you. It definitely sucked to see Pujols' career and Yadier Molina's career end like this, but we're here to talk Pacers. I don't want to get too far down that rabbit hole there, but yeah, a lot of interesting things going on so far in Pacer land, and I'm excited from what I saw so far in the first two preseason games.
I should have worn a Philly shirt, but the problem is they haven't made the playoffs since I was 16, and a lot of my clothing is from when I was about 16, and they were good. So would have been a very tight red T-shirt here on the Locked On Pacers podcast. We'll spare the YouTube listeners that apparel. Yeah, we want to talk preseason takeaways so far. A big gap in their games allowed to really review what's going on. I've watched the Knicks game a couple times now. Mostly because they're a better, more capable opponent, and the Hornets weren't trying for a lot of that game. But either way, we can take away a lot from what we've seen so far from the Pacers. I'll let you decide what I do first, Alex. A positive one or a negative one? You tell me where you want to start this off today.
We'll start things off with positive.
Okay, we'll start on a high note. I have been impressed yet intrigued at the same time by how guard-centric their offense has been in a way that isn't stunningly surprising, but just on a team where there's a lot of offseason hoopla about Jalen Smith. And let's start this guy and see how we can develop this guy in a new situation. We think he's awesome. Rick Carlisle loves teaching this guy. And Miles Turner is going to be in this new role. Finally, the full-time center. Terry Taylor and Isaiah Jackson both have freakish skills. Let's talk about the Knicks game with the context of those guys. Miles Turner took 4 shots. Jalen Smith took 6 shots. Terry Taylor took 2 shots. Isaiah Jackson took 5. They took much more against the Hornets, right? Jalen Smith led the team in shooting against the Hornets. But I think in general, as the game went on, that did not become the case. Turner didn't even play the second half. This isn't a bad thing. I think this is kind of a good new thing, just how the Pacers are. Given that they had Sabonis last year, I've been impressed at their turn to a more guard-centric, flipping around the perimeter kind of style offense where they start possessions with, some pitch actions or some pistol or things like that to get into sets in a different way that allows Tyrese Halliburton to attack from a more favorable position, that allows Buddy Hield to, be catching and shooting whenever he wants. And it's not that the bigs are ignored. They're still talented, but just given the way that they create and how this team plays, I've been sort of impressed and intrigued by the shot balance and the more guard-centric offense we're seeing from the Pacers so far.
No, that's a great point, and I think it kind of makes a lot of sense to go guard-centric since your best players are guards. Chris Duarte, Tyrese Halliburton, Mathurin, even Buddy Hield, all these guards are the creators for this team. And, if you look at last year's team, Sabonis was the creator. So, Carlisle did try to deviate away from giving him all of that playmaking early on in the season, but we saw how he kind of had to go back to that throughout that tough stretch before they decided to go all in on this rebuild. But overall, I agree with that. I think Halliburton definitely needs the ball in his hands as much as possible. You want to let him kind of orchestrate things, and I feel like that is the best thing to do. And with what they've done with the second unit, it kind of feels like Mathurin really is the only guy that's going to be able to create his own shot. Probably outside of McConnell a little bit, but if you're looking at just the way they've made these rotations, it feels like they desperately need the guards to be impactful because the bigs really can't do it on their own.
Yeah, Smith's 11 shots in the first game was encouraging, and he got a bunch of boards that game and was pushing. Turner had 8, and there was a clear emphasis on getting him the ball early. I think half of his shots were in the first 3 minutes of that game. So it's not like the bigs are ignored in the right matchups. Like
Mhm.
Jalen Smith is tall, way taller than PJ Washington, got the ball in advantageous situations. But I think the way they initiate a lot, start possessions, who is involved more, caters more to a guard team as their roster balance does, and the way that the league has kind of been trending for a while suggested that this is the right move with who they have, with what Rick Carlisle's good at in terms of drawing up offensive sets. And I think it's just different so far that they've gone this guard style. And I think it makes sense with, again, the roster imbalance that they have. But I'll be curious if they can, how many games do we see an 11 shot Jalen Smith? Basically, in the first half, he played 20 minutes in that game, right?
Yeah.
Performance versus what we saw against the Knicks, and the Knicks are the better team that were trying harder. What is the norm for this team? Because it seems like it's going to be a more guard centric team that has a lot more sharing. They have a lot of depth and capable players that can play, but we'll see how that balance continues as it goes along. All right, Alex, you're up. Give me something, a takeaway for you from this preseason so far.
Yeah, I mean it's probably the most popular take right here, but it's just Bennedict Mathurin has looked so good in his role, and he looks confident. He looks poised. I mean, getting to the free throw line is something that I find very impressive for just being 2 preseason games. Now, will that translate in the regular season when officiating kind of adjust over the regular season period? We'll have to see how that goes. But at first I was a little bit surprised that he was coming off the bench, Tony, but it makes a lot of sense. And I think it allows him to go up against the second units of other teams, number one. And number two, they're kind of giving him the ball and letting him kind of, not dictate everything. I think McConnell's still going to do that. But I think there's more opportunities here for Mathurin to kind of be a focal point of the offense. Where if he was a starter, a lot of more mouths to feed there, especially with Halliburton having the ball in his hands. Duarte, like you said, Turner going to him early in that first game. So I just feel like it kind of eases him into the game, and knowing his role, I think that's big too. Because one thing that Duarte talked about last year was the inconsistency of being a starter to going to the bench and having to adjust to that. So I think getting Mathurin just more comfortable with that role of coming off the bench is going to be huge. But like I said, the ability to knock down the 3-point shot as well. I think we saw an improvement from that, an adjustment from that from game 1 to game 2. Not afraid to shoot the ball. I like that. I like just how he's, fearless to a certain degree. And that's something the Pacers have needed for a long time. So it's only going to be a matter of time until he does, push for more minutes and potentially into that starting lineup. And that's when we'll probably see some kind of transaction to get that availability open for him. But for right now, I just feel like through 2 preseason games, I don't want to get over analytical about it because it's just preseason. We saw, like you said, the Hornets didn't really try, it felt like, in that game. And then the Knicks were much different, and they were definitely trying much harder. So good to see him be productive in both games despite how the opponent played.
I can't imagine who you're referring to. It could be the transaction that ultimately gets Ben Mather into the starting lineup. I'll be tracking this year just as a curious person. Who ultimately starts first? Does Bennedict Mathurin end up starting for the Pacers first, or does Keegan Murray start for the Kings first? Because it's the same thing in Sacramento. Keegan Murray's been coming off the bench for them, and then looks like he's not trying, and then he finishes the game with like 21 points and 7 rebounds. Every time I've caught the Kings, it's like, okay, they can't hide this forever. Like he's gonna have to start
Yeah.
eventually. I was in the same boat with Mathurin as you, where I thought he would start right away. But seeing the deployment and the units that they have now, I think it makes. I understood both takes the whole time, but I think it makes sense given that, like you said, with the bench unit, McConnell can do that whatever foot fadeaway thing in the lane sometimes. But a lot of the times, that group is either McConnell gets in the lane and makes the defense panic, and someone's going to cut and score, or they've mixed and matched and had some success with Terry Taylor and Buddy Hield together. But in general, they don't have a ton of creation with the second unit. They haven't. I don't think they've had all 5 out there at the same time, outside of maybe a couple minutes. But in general, Mathurin gets the best touches for his development, I think, with the second unit, in that he can drive a lot. Even if it fails, no big deal, reset. And he can go against those lesser defenders, learn how to get all the way to the rim. He can be a guy who's creating and being a key part of that group in a way that with the starters, sure, that is is still possible, but it's not the best option anymore, or you're going against different defenders. You might be being defended by a much better player, which at some point he should be, right? Like we said, he should start at some point this season. But for now, that deployment and that development strategy makes a lot of sense of like, okay, once McConnell does his thing, or if we can't get a shot, like here, there's 8 seconds of the shot clock. Here's the ball, do something. And the way he's been able to get past guys, get all the way to the rim, right? A lot of rookies struggle with that. Aaron Holiday was terrible about that, right? He would get 5 feet from the rim and then chuck something up or reset or something. I think it's all been really impressive the way he's attacked, the role they're using him in. And he was one of my notes as well. I bet Mathurin has the juice, so we'll open the second segment with him too. But just that role, that way he's getting to the rim with that second group has been really impressive to me, and something that I think all season will be a crucial thing to track of like, okay, how's he doing with Halliburton? But also, does it still make sense for him to be getting the reps in this way with this bench group?
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I think that last point you brought up there, how's he doing with Halliburton? Well, I would like to be able to see that, because in the last game they played 38 seconds together. That was it. So it's kind of like, if these are your two of your main pieces moving forward in a rebuild, why aren't you staggering their minutes more to play together? And that was kind of shocking to me to kind of see them only play 38 seconds together, because I get it, it's preseason. I don't want to, jump to too many conclusions, but if these are your two guys that you're wanting to build around and rebuild this roster with, I would like to see them play as many minutes as possible together, especially with Duarte out there with those 3 guys, because those are probably your 3 most talented guards that you have, and who we thought, probably could start, with Buddy coming off the bench or maybe Duarte coming off the bench. But overall, I want to see more combinations of Halliburton with Bennedict Mathurin, and then I don't really care who else is out there, but I just want to see those 2 guys play together and see how they play off of each other, because that to me is just like a huge talking point as well.
Hey guys, gonna take one short little break here to talk to you guys about Built Bar. If you haven't tried Built Bar Puffs yet, you're depriving yourself of one of life's greatest joys, and there's a new flavor of them, indulgent cookie dough. What makes Built Bar so good? They're all 100% covered in chocolate, and their new flavor is no different. Built Bar are protein bars covered in chocolate. So many delicious flavors. They all have awesome texture that matches the flavor. It just makes them absolutely perfect for anyone. They have fruit flavors, sweeter flavors, some are more savory. They're all absolutely delicious. The cookie dough chunk puff one, light chewy texture, real cookie dough chunks, and the chocolate to go with some marshmallows. All the joys of eating cookie dough with no hassle of making it. And they're all healthy too. Only 160 calories and a whopping 15 grams of protein in the cookie dough chunk puff. They have so many delicious flavors. I love the peanut butter brownie. And there's something for everyone. Collagen protein so your body absorbs them faster. There's so many pros. There's no cons. Go try them yourself. Go to built.com, BUILT.com. Use the promo code LOCKEDON15. You'll get 15% off your order. That promo code again is LOCKEDON15 for 15% off at built.com. Thanks everybody for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day, except if you had Setting the Pace as your first listen. That also counts today since Alex is here with me. Hey, for your second listen, I don't know, there's lots of teams with juice going on, but how about the team where Draymond Green is punching his teammate Locked On Warriors? Listen to Cyrus Ataz break that down, especially because Evan Turner decided to get involved for no reason on Twitter. If you haven't seen that, I highly recommend you see what Evan Turner had to say. I'm not going to talk about it because I don't care. Moving on from that, though, yeah, I agree with you about getting Mathurin and Halliburton together more. I understand why, especially in the preseason with exploration, maybe it hasn't happened more often. 38 seconds is still too low to me. But, when Halliburton checked out in the third quarter of the next game, he was leading the team in shot attempts, which was the biggest takeaway to me. Like, that is the thing he needs to be working on at this time is aggression, get your shot. Like, he was getting pretty close to the rim with those scoop layups, and his threes were great. That is important still. And then Mathurin came in the third and fourth quarter and ended up blowing him out of the water in shot attempts, and deservedly so. He played very well. But getting them together a little bit, I think I would like to see more exploration in that way. I don't know their minutes together from tracking data in the preseason. I don't have that in front of me, but that is something I would like to see more of, even though I think Mathurin has been impressive with his drives. And the three's been falling a little bit in the last game. 11 free throw attempts through 2 games, even with rookie no respect calls coming his way this season. I don't think the refereeing has been bad. That's going to happen. Remember Duarte last year had 2 fouls on buzzer beaters uncalled. It just will happen, but he's done well getting to the rim, drawing those fouls, and playing well. I'm encouraged by his development so far. All right, I got to be the bad cop now. We've been too nice.
Let's do it.
I've been too nice. The defense against look, they gave up 97 against the Hornets. The defense was fine in that game. The Hornets looked miserable. The Knicks looked like a capable team and hung 131 on the Pacers with ease. No difficulty. Not only 9 turnovers, no pressure on ball handlers. Jalen Brunson could get to whatever spot he wanted whenever he wanted. Same with RJ Barrett. Julius Randle played well as well. I think that I can't just ignore the Hornets game and be like, well, they played good defense that game. I don't care. So this is, to me, I talked about this yesterday, going to be a problem for them in that I think they're going to be a really inconsistent defensive team. Some games, I think they'll look mostly on a string and focused and connected, but there'll be some games where there's like one wrong matchup. It was Brunson a lot of the time in this game, or just one stud that breaks them down in a way that, they don't have the recovering principles down necessarily. They're a young team. Young teams are inconsistent by default. And I think they're going to have more bad defensive games than good defensive games this year. Thankfully, they got a good one in first so that fans don't just completely panic off the jump. But I mean, I was more discouraged by the defense against the Knicks than I was encouraged against the Hornets. And the Knicks aren't some world-beating offensive team. They scored 131 easily.
Yeah.
So I have some defensive concerns, and I think they're going to be really inconsistent on that end unless one of their guards can become a better perimeter stopper so they can contain some guards. But as it stands, Duarte is an okay option, and Nesmith was hurt for part of that game, so he couldn't do what he did against the Hornets. But they don't have the guys to contain some of these better ball handlers, and I think that's going to plague them a lot this season, even with Turner back to help sometimes.
No, I mean, you make a great point. I mean, I thought Jalen Brunson just looked so calm and cool out there. Didn't have any pressure on him. That's where Halliburton's got to get better. And, on our podcast, when we talked with him, he was like, Facci was like, yeah, I think you're a good defender. And he was just kind of trying to feed his ego a little bit there. And Halliburton's like, yeah, thank you. Everybody says I'm bad. Well, it's like, you're not great. So let's, I really would rather see that than see him get 20 and 10. I'd rather him be like 18 and 8 with good defense than 20 and 10. We know the offense is there for this team. So he's going to have to lead and be the leader of that, I think, in terms of just he's a team leader. So he's going to have to take that on his shoulders. But, Duarte is probably their best option in that starting lineup. We know Buddy Hield's not a great on-ball defender. He can be a decent team defender at times, but not a great on-ball defender. And then you've also got to factor in Jalen Smith guarding fours. Are they going to be too quick for him? And I'm still kind of, I haven't got my verdict out on whether I think Jalen Smith is a good fit at the 4 yet. That's still something that's kind of like pending my opinion on still, because I'm trying to figure out how he fits overall. But, when they had that big run, the Knicks, I felt like that was when Turner was not in the game. And he just is such a good anchor for this team with his experience. And Isaiah Jackson, while he's super fun to watch, just a little bit, overexcited to block shots and stuff like that, where Turner is going to block shots, but he's also not going to leave his feet 24/7 to try to get the highlight block. So I thought that was really important. I will also say transition defense was terrible.
Yes.
Especially in that second half. I mean, the one that we all loved was the Obi Toppin between the legs dunk, right? Like that was kind of fun to watch as just a fan of the NBA. But if you go back and watch it, what a bad decision by Kendall Brown there on that 3-point shot. He rushes in after he shoots it and tries to jump up and stop the pass like something you would see in pickup ball when someone's kind of lazy. And Obi Toppin just leaked free there for that. And then a couple other times when he got dunks, Goga was right there at like half court, and he just kind of let him slip right behind him just because he was kind of watching the ball. So to me, it's like just little things like that, paying attention to what your surroundings are instead of just watching the ball. I think it's going to happen throughout the game. You're going to have breakdowns. I'm not over criticizing them, but I still think the defense altogether, it's just got to be more collective. And I was kind of confused. I don't know if you noticed what kind of zone or what kind of defense they were playing, because sometimes it looked like they were in man, almost looked like a matchup zone, and they were switching a lot. So I don't know if that's part of it, just trying to learn new schemes, but they're going to have to be a lot better.
They're definitely switching a lot. They have good size at every position except for TJ McConnell, basically. So
Yeah.
It makes sense for them to do so, which will help them, I think, with with less beats and things like that. But yeah, I think most of those points are correct. And the big stat for me is like Brunson was 4 for 12. It sounds like I'm being overcritical, but he had 9 free throw attempts, right? Julius Randle was 4 for 11, although 6 of his 7 misses were threes. He had 7 free throw attempts, right? So it's not necessarily that like they're so atrocious when they don't foul, but like they get beat so much that someone else has to cover for them and foul. And that's how this guy gets to the free throw line for easy points. Knicks went 26 for 27 from the free throw line. I thought that was funny that the thing the Pacers did so well against the Hornets was the exact thing the Knicks did well to a T, exact same numbers to beat them 2 nights later. But yeah, they couldn't stop fouling when those guys would get beat. So even if they had slightly off shooting nights, still 17 points on 12 shots for Brunson, still 15 points on 11 shots for Randall. And in a way that it was so emblematic of just like they couldn't keep the ball in front of them. I think Tyrese will be a great team defender one day. He's good at jumping the passing lanes. He reads the game very well. His on-ball defense is not very good, right? At this time, it's just not. And so Buddy Hield's defense, it just is what it is. He's 30. His team defense is really bad. So I'm worried about their defense this year, and I was before 2 preseason games, but just seeing it and knowing like they're going to be this inconsistent, they're going to struggle with how to recover after beats and things like that. That is now ingrained in me. Alex, thing number 2 for you, preseason thing number 2.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up Aaron Nesmith in game 1, but
the injury is just a brutal timed one, isn't it?
I know. So I'm going to have to pivot a little bit here, and I'm going to go with Chris Duarte. And I feel like he looked a lot better against the Knicks than he did against the Hornets. And I still think we're trying to figure out who Duarte is exactly. I think he's kind of one of the young guys. Well, he's not really super young, but second-year player, right? I mean, everybody's excited about Halliburton, what he can do. Mathurin, he's the rookie, obviously. Then you got Isaiah Jackson, the pogo stick who can dunk everything, and then Jalen Smith coming back. But Duarte kind of feels like this guy that people are kind of sleeping on a little bit in terms of forgetting how important he is to this team. And I looked at last year's defensive rating numbers, and he was the best. He had the highest defensive rating of guys still on the team this season. So I just feel like there's a lot of reason why Rick Carlisle has him out in the starting lineup is because of his defensive versatility and how, he's already played before too with Turner and Halliburton. I think that does help a little bit since he's played with both of them. And, Mathurin defensively, he still has a lot to learn. But I just feel like Duarte, he's not like a great shot creator, but he can, good catch and shoot kind of guy, good defender, good team player. And that's one of the things I've been impressed with him so far. Like, I know he made that one bad pass on when he threw it in from out of bounds. And I think Cam Reddish stole it, and he just swatted Cam Reddish at the rim like it was no big deal. And then they got the ball back and scored, obviously. But there's just little things like you can tell where he needs to work on some things for sure overall as just a player. But I feel like he's going to have a surprising season this year for the Pacers. And I think people are going to be like, wow, he actually played really well. And I kind of slept on him because I was focused on all these other young, shiny new toys that we have. But Duarte, I think, is just going to be that steady guy that kind of helps balance this team out overall.
Hey guys, one more break here so I can talk to you about PrizePicks Daily Fantasy Made Easy. You can go make entries right on PrizePicks where you pick, will a player have more or less than their player projections? For example, will Luka Doncic score more or less than 26.5 points? Their format is super easy. You can do it daily, and it's so much fun. You pick 2 to 5 players. If they will score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can up to 10 times your money on any entry. No competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. PrizePicks offers projections on any sport you watch: NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, PGA, college football. I could go on and on. They've got it all there and more than you could want, and entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. They offer safe and fast withdrawals, and it's currently operational in over 30 states as well as Canada. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com. Sign up today to play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, they'll give you $50, and so on. Don't forget, enter that promo code Locked On and sign up for an instant match deposit of up to $100 at PrizePicks. Thanks again for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every day. Continue to talk about Chris Duarte here. Great points Alex just made. Quick clarification. You say highest defensive rating, you mean best, like the
Yes.
best to know. Okay.
Yes.
I thought so. And it makes sense because he was their best defensive wing last year. Lo and behold, that is an important role to fill for a professional basketball team. It's pretty funny how under the radar he's kind of flown in these games. He had 11, 5, and 3 against New York in 20 minutes, right? Pretend he'll play 30 minutes in a game. That's basically like a 15, 7, and 4 game. Like, that's a great game. Against Charlotte, 2 days before, he had 12, 6, and 2 in 22 minutes. Like, and again, in a 30-minute game, I'm just sort of estimating in my head, that's like a 15, 8, and 3 game. Like, those are good stat games. He's not playing the whole game, so they're not shining through. And this is an interesting thing I've never really gotten to articulate, but I can here. I talked a lot about this summer, him improving his handle so that he can use it to get past guys off the dribble or bend a defense and things like that. And that's still true. I think that's still a useful skill for him. But the secondary benefit of a better handle is like if you're the secondary or tertiary creator, Chris Duarte, and you have better handle, you can now create for others better or like be connecting piece better. And that two hard dribbles changes the defense or you're setting up someone else. Like it adds skill to his game that doesn't just help him in the very obvious way that it could. It also makes him better as that connecting piece. And that's where I think I would describe him as a fit so far in the starting five is the connecting piece, right? Buddy Hield, obvious threat, making defenses panic. Halliburton, the bigs are doing the screens. And then Chris Duarte is sort of the connector, usually on the strong side, making something happen, being close to the ball, throwing it back, throwing it to the post, dribbling, trying to score. And that's been really important for him as a development step for him from being mostly a shooter or just like, okay, you have one move, you're going to try to drive and then fade away kind of player. And so he added a little bit of handle, not too much, a little bit of handle, and it's added to his game in a way that was sort of discussed, but not in this exact way. And I think he'll be that connecting piece. And yeah, I think I'd keep him in the starting five over Buddy if they decide to promote Mathurin one day because of those skills and because his three ball is going to be important to that unit.
No, I totally agree with that, and I think versatility wise, if you put Mathurin out there, they're switching a lot on defense, so it just makes more sense to have a better defender out there in Mathurin than Buddy Hield. No offense to Buddy, but like you said, he's 30. He is what he is as a defender. It's not going to change, so you kind of live with that. But yeah, I really like what I've seen from Duarte. Even last year as a rookie, put up some really big numbers. Never let the moment get too big for him. We saw he went through some slumps, obviously dealt with some injuries, that kind of thing, but he's a fiery guy too. I'll never forget when he got those double texts against Minnesota on the road last year. I kind of want to see some more of that from him. That's the one thing I do wish we had more of on this team is more fiery guys. It's not a big deal, but I just like seeing that energy on the court as well. At frustrations, I don't mind seeing guys get a little frustrated on the court and taking it out on the court, but not Draymond Green level, obviously. But overall, I
Do I
like
need to
that
bring up
fire.
Evan Turner again? Do we need that kind of fire? Is that
Oh
what we
man.
I
No,
don't think we need
it's just,
that.
and obviously everyone's sad that Lance isn't here and whatever, a lot of fans are. I know you might not be, but fans that love Lance, I'm glad we have someone we can connect with here with Mathurin. But besides that, Duarte, I'm getting off track. I apologize. But Duarte, I really do like what he brings skill set wise. And that's why I think the Pacers are so much higher on him than maybe some of us are as fans that are like, well, if you had to include him in a trade, you do it because is he really a starter? Well, on this team, he definitely is a starter. And I just want to see him continue to grow in that role. And hopefully it's more consistent throughout the season and not so back and forth like it was last year where he was in and out of the starting lineup.
Yeah, he's got an obvious 3-and-D path that makes me put value on him in a rebuild just as a useful guy to have, right? Like
Yeah.
Harrison Barnes to the Warriors in their first title run. Like that player is important even if they're very unheralded,
Yeah.
through the whole run. So, yeah, I agree. I think he's had an interesting role in these first couple preseason games, and I think his role will probably evolve more than most guys we've seen so far throughout the season. Like last year, remember he was taking 17 shots, 18 shots a game to open the season, which was a little much, but his
Right.
role changed quite a bit as the team changed. I think as a result of being a malleable player, that will happen to him again this year. My last one I want to do, since we both doubled in on Mathurin, is a little shorter, but this is a takeaway for me because I went 9 for 10 on rotation guys when I tried to guess their rotation 2 months early. Terry Taylor. Terry. First of all, it's just such an impressive talent. So I have so many anecdotes about this, and I had talked to Rick about Terry a little bit at practice today. But it's wild to me how many players have said something to the effect of, oh man, he's been really impressive this year. He's a guy who's taken a step forward. Like I always try to ask, hey, anybody look better than last year? And the most common answer of, outside of the wishy-washy, like, oh, everybody looks good and in great shape, blah, blah, whatever. I don't care about that. Is Terry Taylor. They think Terry Taylor looks good. So I was talking to Rick about him today. He said he's just very consistent for a young player. He's a guy you never really have to tell anything to twice. He gets it the first time. He's thoughtful. He's got an intellectual curiosity for the game, and he works. Comes in at night, right? Credited the organization for finding him as an undrafted player. So he's got this little two-man game going on with Buddy where if the defense rushes to Buddy Hield so he doesn't shoot a three, he's diving to the rim, and I think he's gotten 3 layups out of it. in preseason. Obviously, his rebounding numbers look fake every game for a 6'4" player. He's obviously impressive and talented. I did not think he'd be in the rotation, but I get why, one, if he's better than last year, that they're going to play him. And two, if he can be this 4, not a 5, which is another noteworthy thing at all, if he can be this kind of rock solid offensive 4, even if he's not a stretch 4, I think there is a role for him as a guy who basically just never misses inside of 5 feet.
Yeah, and I mean, when he was on our podcast, he talked about, kind of watching Draymond Green film on the podcast and saying he wanted to kind of like become a defensive presence like him. So I feel like if that's kind of the mentality that he has and the work ethic that he has, I don't think he's going to reach it, obviously, anytime soon, because that's, Draymond at his best is incredible, like defensive player of the year, right? But I think Terry, if he can just get some of those traits and apply those to how he plays, it's going to be hard for them to keep him off the floor. So, I was too surprised. I think we both had O'Shea being that guy that was going to get those minutes because he was starting last year with Rick, especially down the stretch. And like he even looked good in that last Brooklyn game offensively, guarding Kevin Durant as well. But, Terry Taylor, he's just a workhorse, man. And I know that the Pacers are very high on him. And, I've talked to some people that feel like that's kind of like the Thad Young of this team is Terry Taylor for them. So it does make some sense why they kind of like someone like that, someone scrappy, not known as being an outside presence, like you said, but they can impact the game in so many ways. And one reason I thought maybe they're playing him next to Isaiah Jackson is because they've already seen that sample size from summer league to last year a little bit, and even in the G League they played a little bit together. Maybe they like that combination together. I don't know if I love it. If you're looking at how the team looks in terms of like how that spacing would look and all that, but overall, if they've got that good chemistry, it makes some sense. But Terry Taylor, I mean, you can't say enough good things about him. I love his work ethic. I love how effective he is on the glass. An incredible offensive rebounder, too, just has a nose for the basketball. So maybe that's what they're thinking, get them more possessions, because without Sabonis, you're going to need guys to rebound the basketball. And, we saw Turner have 9 rebounds in the first half against the Knicks. I thought that was a great sign. Hopefully he can become that double-digit rebounder that so many people, even myself at points, have said. I don't know if he can be, but I just want to see him assert himself more in that position. But, Terry Taylor is just a natural rebounder, just a natural coach's dream is what I would say. He's just kind of like one of those guys that you, like Rick said, you don't have to tell him twice how to do things. And I think the positive energy, even when he hasn't played, has helped him too, because coaches look for that. If you're on the sideline and you're not in the rotation, how are you acting? And so that to me is another big thing. Terry Taylor's just been a great team player, and I expect good things from him. I don't know if he's ever going to be more than just like a rotation guy on a team, but you got to like what you see so far, Tony.
I'm giving up on putting ceilings on him because
it's tough.
There's no one like him. There's just no. I've never seen a 6'4", 6'5", whatever you want to call him. I don't care. Player like who's best at center and is a good 4, but also can't shoot. Like it's like how does this make sense? But it worked. So it's just incomparable. Like I hear him talk about like studying Draymond film. That's great. You can't pass like Draymond. Like you're not even close.
No.
On the offensive side of the ball, he's like a big engine to make Steph Curry go. Obviously, he's one of the best defenders of the generation. That's a whole different thing. But like same with Thad. Even with Thad. That's 6'8". Thad can defend forwards. Like, I don't know if he'll ever be able to do that. And it's not a knock on him. Maybe he can be this awesome guard defender one day, or there's so many. He's incomparable, and I have no idea what he's going to become. So I'm not even gonna guess what his role will be at his best, because
that's fair.
It doesn't make sense what he is, and that's not a negative on any player. It's just like I've never seen anything like this to say like, oh, maybe it'll go like this guy or this guy. So we'll see. Do you have any other thing you want to talk about from preseason so far?
I guess we can kind of piggyback off of the Terry Taylor conversation. I know that we've talked about this probably both before on the podcast we do, but what is going on with O'Shea Brissett? Why is he not in the rotation? I kind of understand it. Like we said, like they really value Terry Taylor, but do they not value him as a 3? Do they think O'Shea is more of a 4? Is he going to get those minutes the next 2 preseason games with Nesmith out with that injury? That's something I'm going to monitor just moving forward to see who they decide to use, because last year, it made some sense. They were trying to win. They brought in Torrey Craig as a free agent, whatever. And then O'Shea this year obviously didn't get extended in the offseason. He said he wanted to be extended. So clearly by not doing that, it made it kind of clear like the Pacers maybe value him less than me and you value him on this team and what he means to it. So I'm just kind of confused overall by his lack of being in the 10-man rotation. and what he has to really do to kind of prove himself to get back in it. I think he's a really nice young player, especially for what he's making in terms of money wise and his story coming from the G League. But overall, Tony, I just feel like O'Shea is a good player. A lot of fans like him as a player as well, but it just seems like the Pacers maybe don't have as much invested in him as maybe me and you think that they should.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff I said about Duarte earlier and why I think he's had a successful preseason so far applies to what I think about Brissett, the player, in terms of being a connecting piece and being kind of creative when he's on the floor. And, Caitlin Cooper calls him resourceful. Like he's good at finding ways to cut or be a screening threat or just be around plays and have a positive impact, even when he's not supposed to or when it's not obvious what he's supposed to do. And that's a valuable player. And hey, being 6'7" is also valuable in the NBA these days. And he is the only one on this roster. Yeah, I still think he should be in the rotation. And look, and Neesmith and Terry Taylor are doing their best to say shut up. But yeah, I still think he should play. And I think with Neesmith out, he makes the most sense as the new backup three. Why not? I mean, explore what he could play to the positions. And as the season progresses, like basically any injury, pick a player, like take him out of the rotation. You can find a way to get Brissett in. Like you just got to move one guy to a different spot, and he's playing. So I'm guessing he'll play a lot this year still, but I still am pretty surprised that he's not in their top 10 given what he played the most games for them last year. He was really important for them the year they made the play-in under Bjorkgren 2 years ago. Like I understand his limitations, I totally do, but I also think he's one of their. I'd put him in the top 8 if I made an 8-man rotation. So I've been surprised he hasn't played. The results so far suggest that maybe the Rick Carlisle's right. So I don't have too much on that at this time because Neesmith had a 16-point game and played good defense, and Terry Taylor, obviously, we just praised, has been well deserving. I suppose someone has to not play between those two, but I personally myself would play Brissett over Taylor, and we'll see what ends up happening with his playing time.
Yeah, and I'll just say one more thing on that. I mean, it makes sense for Neesmith to get more minutes because you did trade Brogdon for him. He is under.
That's not a reason to play a guy, though.
Well, I'm just saying he's under rookie control in terms of like what you're trying to invest in him. So I think with O'Shea being an expiring and an unrestricted free agent next year, maybe they're thinking long term, like, okay, we know we can at least have Neesmith maybe for the next 4 to 5 years, whatever. So let's see what he's really worth before we just kind of put O'Shea in over him. And then the other thing too, which I know it's way down the line, but it's like if you don't get Wembanyama next year in the draft, you're more than likely taking another player that plays that same position based off of the top tier talent in this draft. So is there going to be enough playing time for him moving forward? Now, you can't focus on that too much for this year. I get that. But it's just something in the back of my mind, like why they didn't maybe give him the extension and stuff like that. But I think overall, it really just comes down to they're higher on Neesmith and Taylor than they are on O'Shea. And maybe it's because they feel like they're better fits defensively. But at the same time, like you said, O'Shea's size with a little bit of work ethic and, growth as a player, he's still really young. I think people forget about that. He's still a really young guy. So it does make sense for him to fit with this youth movement. But yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of confused by it, but I kind of understand at the same time. It's just, I think O'Shea's probably the one player on this team rooting for a trade more than anybody.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Same thing I said with the injuries. Like, okay, Turner's dealt. Now it can be like Smith, Jackson, Taylor, Brissett, or you could go any number. And if Hield's traded, then you slide Neesmith down a spot, and boom, O'Shea's in. Like it's so like, and no matter who's out, it's easy to plug him in. So we'll see what ends up happening with him. I think he'll probably still play 50 plus games this year because of what we just said, but I am still surprised at where he is in the pecking order. And maybe it changes. It did last year, even though in the first 15 games, I think he only played in like 4 of them last year. They finally were like, okay, we got to get you in the game. Alex, thank you for the time, sir. I'm sure most people who listen to Locked On Pacers know who you are and where to find you. But for those who don't, go ahead.
Yeah, just follow me on Twitter at Alex Golden NBA. I have random takes and sometimes good ones, sometimes bad ones, but we can talk about them. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, I don't do too much over there, but every once in a while, I'll come up with some Thursday trivia for everybody to play. So if you want to follow me on there, we got random Thursday trivia. Not always NBA related. I try to keep it random stuff. So there you go. If you want to non-Pacers plug there, follow me on Instagram.
I've never plugged my Instagram. I don't use it for basketball.
Yeah.
I tweeted a video at Fan Jam. I'm sure you saw it of they let this kid play who just asked if he could play,
Yeah.
and this big Instagram account with over 1 million followers put it on their Instagram, which is fine. And they tagged my personal account. They found it somehow in this video. I was like, how did they find me? Why? I mean, I appreciate them putting a source on it, but I was like, wait a minute, how did this happen? Like, someone's gonna come to my account and be like, who the heck is this guy? I have an Instagram. I don't care if you find it. I don't use it anymore.
You don't do any
Yes,
trivia?
huh?
You don't do any trivia on your Instagram?
No, I do not do trivia on my Instagram. Alex hosts Setting the Pace as well, which he did not just say. Blue
Well,
Wires Pacers podcast with Mike. You're allowed to plug your own stuff, dude.
I
You're
know,
here.
but it is what it is. Setting the pace, if you want some fun, outlandish takes, you can follow Facci2 _ FACCI. Nobody's going to have more energy. I think there's only one person rivaling Tony here for biggest Wizards fan, and that's Facci. So
I got my Wizards mug up behind the Pacers T-shirt in a case, but I don't think people
you
would
gotta,
like
you gotta flaunt that a little bit more. I don't think people realize how much of a Wizards fan you are. I know you've said it a couple times on the podcast, but
Yeah, my 3 John Wall jerseys will make an appearance on this show at some point, I'm sure. Yeah, I don't have anything else today. Pacers, Knicks again tomorrow, so we'll be talking a little bit about adjustments and what was said at practice this week on tomorrow's show, and I'll fit in one of my several remaining pre-season beginning evergreen topics. We'll, of course, break that game down, talk Rockets on Friday. The games are the story this week, and I'm guessing, just given how little time there is till the regular season, we'll see some of the roster tweaks come at some point this week, maybe on Tuesday before the game if they want to play some of those guys, maybe later in the week, whatever, as they finalize the regular season roster. We'll, of course, cover that all here as well. And Alex will over at Setting the Pace and the Blue and Golden. Thank you all for listening today. We'll be back tomorrow. Till then, everybody, have a great day.